The morning light slipped through the blinds like thin blades of gold, cutting across the quiet bedroom of the old house on Maple Street. Eleanor Hart, Ellie to everyone who'd known her before the grief, stood before her, safe. Her fingers trembled slightly as she turned the familiar dial. 3 turns right, 2 left, 1 right. Click. The sound echoed through the stillness like a heartbeat. When the door swung open, she froze. The safe was empty. The velvet box that once held her emerald earrings was gone. The pearls Daniel had given her on their 25th anniversary. Gone. The gold bangles she'd worn the day each of her children was born. Gone. A calm voice broke the silence behind her. "Looking for something, Mom?" Ellie turned. Vanessa stood in the doorway, a mug of coffee in one manicured hand. Her lips curled into a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "My jewelry," Ellie whispered. "They're not here." "Oh, right," Vanessa said casually, taking a sip. "We donated everything. You don't really need all that anymore, do you?" The words hit harder than a slap. Ellie's pulse roared in her ears. She steadied herself against the safe, forcing her voice to stay even. "Donated?" Vanessa shrugged. "They were just things, Mom. You always say what matters is what's in the heart. You had no right." "At your age," Vanessa said softly, almost pitying, "you shouldn't worry about material things. You're retired. You stay home. Let us handle life for you." Ellie inhaled once, twice. Her voice came out calm but cold. "You're right, Vanessa," she said. "I don't need them anymore." Then she took a step forward, her gaze unwavering. "But you're going to need a lawyer." Vanessa blinked, her smugness cracking. The color drained from her face. Ellie walked past her, out of the room, and down the stairs, heart pounding. But her steps were steady. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every shadow in the house felt foreign. 3 years ago, this home had been filled with laughter. Her husband Daniel humming Sinatra in the kitchen, her children calling from out of state, grandkids running across the porch. But since Daniel's sudden heart attack, the laughter had thinned, leaving only echoes and dust motes. Then Michael had brought Vanessa home. She'd been radiant. Dark hair, sharp eyes, confident. She'd arrived with flowers and compassion, promising, "You won't have to be alone anymore, Mrs. Hart." Ellie, still raw from grief, had believed her. When they asked to move in, "Just until we save up for our own place, Mom." Ellie said yes before Michael even finished the sentence. The first months felt like sunlight after a long winter. Vanessa cooked elaborate dinners, filled the house with music, convinced Ellie to redecorate. But slowly, the warmth turned to control. "This old couch hurts your back," Vanessa said, replacing it without asking. "Let me handle the bills. You shouldn't stress." Ellie, craving harmony, agreed. Soon, her credit card vanished for safekeeping. Her book club meetings became too far to drive alone. When Ellie's friend Linda called, confused, she said, "Vanessa told me your memory's been slipping, honey. Are you okay?" Ellie had laughed it off, but that night, shame kept her awake. And Michael, her sweet boy, was always too tired. He worked late, came home quiet, and let Vanessa speak for both of them. On Ellie's 68th birthday, Vanessa threw a party for her own friends. She told Ellie gently, "We'll be a little loud tonight, Mom. Maybe stay in your room." So Ellie stayed upstairs, listening to laughter echo through her walls. When she stepped into the hallway, she heard voices from the living room. "Once she's in assisted living," Vanessa said, "we'll sell this dinosaur. Zillow says 800 grand easy." Ellie's hand gripped the banister. Someone asked, "And Michael's okay with it?" He nodded. "He knows it's for the best," Vanessa replied. Something broke in Ellie's chest. Not her heart, but the illusion that she was loved. She returned to her room, looked in the mirror, and saw not a frail widow, but the woman who had raised 3 kids, taught hundreds of children, survived loss. Her reflection was tired, yes, but fierce. At 9:47 p.m., she picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called since Daniel's funeral. "Tom Blake," answered a steady, familiar voice. "Tom," she whispered, her voice trembling but sure. "I need your help. My family is stealing from me." A pause, then. "Don't say another word on the phone. Come to my office tomorrow at 10. Ellie hung up, closed the empty safe, and turned off the light. The house on Maple Street was silent again. But not for long. The next morning, rain swept through Chicago like a gray veil, soft but relentless. Eleanor Hart stood outside a brick office building downtown, clutching her purse as if it were a lifeline. The plaque by the door read, "Blake and Associates, Attorneys at Law." She hesitated only a second before pushing through the glass doors. Tom Blake rose from behind his cluttered desk when he saw her. He looked older than she remembered, grayer hair, heavier shoulders. But his voice still carried the same quiet authority Daniel had once admired. "Ellie," he said, coming around to hug her gently, "you haven't aged a day." She gave a humorless laugh. "Flattery from a lawyer, Tom. You must really think I'm in trouble." He gestured to the chair. "Tell me everything." For the next hour, she did. She spoke of the empty safe, the missing jewelry, the vanished savings, the isolation. She described Vanessa's charm turned control, Michael's silence, the humiliation of being treated like an inconvenience in her own house. By the end, her hands shook. Tom listened without interruption, only scribbling notes. When she finished, he took off his glasses, his expression darkening. "Ellie, this isn't just theft. This is financial elder abuse. And if what you're saying about her handling your accounts is true, it's fraud." "Fraud," Ellie repeated softly. The word sounded heavy, dangerous. "Can I prove it?" "We can," Tom said, leaning forward. "But you'll need patience and evidence." That word, evidence, lit something in her. Over the next week, Ellie became an actress. By day, she played the meek, grateful mother-in-law, letting Vanessa dictate her life. By night, she wrote lists, hid receipts, and planned her moves like a detective. The first step, her money. Under Tom's guidance, she opened a new account at a credit union in her name only. She redirected her pension there, quietly closing the joint account Vanessa had access to. Then came the second step, the paper trail. Tom's paralegal, a young woman named Jessica, traced Ellie's old account history. "Look at this," she said during their second meeting, highlighting a row of transactions. Transfers, luxury purchases, and Venmo payments to Vanessa Lifestyle. Ellie's stomach twisted. "What kind of lifestyle exactly?" "The kind that doesn't belong to you," Jessica said grimly. Meanwhile, a private investigator Tom hired found the jewelry, pawned on the South Side under Vanessa Cruz Hart. The pawn ticket showed $35,000 in exchange for decades of Ellie's memories. When Tom showed her the photos, her emerald earrings, her mother's pearls, the diamond ring Daniel had given her after their first granddaughter was born, Ellie's breath hitched. "She sold my life for cash," she whispered. Tom rested a hand over hers. "And now we have proof." But proof wasn't enough. Not yet. They needed Vanessa's words, and Ellie was the only one who could get them. She began leaving her phone recording during conversations. In the kitchen, Vanessa boasted to a friend on speaker. "Once Michael gets her to sign power of attorney, we can do whatever we want." Later that week, Ellie caught her saying, "She barely thinks straight anymore. The house is practically ours." Each phrase was a dagger, but Ellie pressed save every time. Tom's plan grew piece by piece. They'd compile the recordings, photos, statements, and financial records into one airtight case. But before they could act, they needed witnesses. People who could testify to the change in Ellie's life since Vanessa moved in. "Who knows you best?" Tom asked one afternoon. "My children," Ellie said. "Julia, Ethan, and Marissa. Then call them. Bring them home. Tell them it's a family visit. No details yet. That night, she called Julia in Denver. Her daughter's voice crackled through the line. "Mom, you never call this late. What's wrong?" Ellie hesitated. "I just miss everyone. Think you could come this weekend?" Julia's tone sharpened. "You sound scared." "Just come," Ellie said softly. "Please." Within days, all three of her children booked flights. For the first time in years, the old house would be full again, not of laughter, but of truth. Before hanging up, Tom gave Ellie one final instruction. "Act normal," he said. "And one more thing. Mention your will within earshot of Vanessa. Loudly." Ellie frowned. "Why?" "Because snakes always slither closer when they smell money." That evening, while pouring tea in the kitchen, Ellie spoke clearly, knowing Vanessa was nearby. "Tom's helping me update my will tomorrow," she said, as casually as possible. The sound of footsteps paused in the hallway. Ellie smiled to herself, hiding the tremor of adrenaline in her hands. The game had begun, and this time, she wasn't the prey. Monday arrived with an eerie calm. The maple tree outside swayed in the afternoon breeze, as if the house itself knew what was coming. Eleanor Hart stood at the window, her reflection ghosting over the glass, steady, determined. Everything was ready. The documents, the photos, the recordings, and most importantly, her family. By 7 o'clock, Julia, Ethan, and Marissa had arrived. They filled the house with the faint warmth of old memories. Voices in the hallway, coffee brewing, the clink of silverware. But underneath, tension coiled tight as piano wire. When Michael's car pulled into the driveway, Ellie's heart clenched. He stepped inside, tired from work, loosening his tie, surprised to see everyone gathered. Vanessa followed behind him, all perfume and polite confusion. "What's going on?" Michael asked. Ellie met his eyes. "Sit down, son. We need to talk." Vanessa let out a brittle laugh. "Talk? About what?" Tom Blake's voice came from the corner as he closed his briefcase. "About truth, Mrs. Cruzhart." Her head snapped toward him. "Who are you?" "Your mother-in-law's attorney." The words sliced through the air. Vanessa's smile faltered. Ellie remained standing, composed, her voice quiet but firm. "You've been running this house for 2 years, Vanessa. Making decisions, spending money, selling what doesn't belong to you. Tonight, it stops." Vanessa crossed her arms, feigning outrage. "You've lost your mind." Ellie opened a folder on the coffee table. "No, dear. I found my receipts." Tom nodded for her to continue. Ellie placed the first page on the table. Highlighted bank statements, transactions leading straight to Vanessa's name. Luxury purchases, unexplained transfers, payments to Vanessa Lifestyle. That's quite a brand you've built. Vanessa's face drained of color. "Those were family expenses." Ethan leaned forward. "Since when does family expense include designer handbags and spa weekends?" Next came the photographs, printed in glossy color. Ellie's jewelry, tagged and displayed under harsh pawnshop lights. "Recognize these?" Tom asked. Vanessa's mouth opened, then shut. Ellie pressed on. "You said you donated them, but they were pawned for $35,000. Under your name." Michael stared, disbelief spreading across his features. "Vanessa, tell me that's not true," she stammered. I was going to buy them back. It was temporary." "Temporary theft?" Julia snapped. Tom took out a small recorder and pressed play. Vanessa's voice filled the room, smooth and cruel. "Once Michael gets her to sign power of attorney, we can do whatever we want." The sound was undeniable. Michael stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "What is that?" "Your wife," Ellie said. "That was recorded 2 weeks ago." Vanessa's composure shattered. "You spied on me." "I protected myself," Ellie said evenly, "because you were destroying me." For a long moment, the only sound was the ticking of the wall clock. Then Tom's calm voice broke the silence. "Mrs. Hart is offering you a choice. You return every dollar you took, sign away any claim to her property, and leave this house within 15 days. Or we press criminal charges for elder fraud and financial abuse." Vanessa laughed shakily, trying to regain ground. "You wouldn't dare. I'll tell the court she's senile." Ellie slid a paper across the table. A signed medical report bearing the official stamp of her doctor. "Certified full mental capacity," Ellie said softly. "Try again." Vanessa's bravado crumbled. She looked around the room for support, but none came. Michael's hands were shaking. "You lied to me," he whispered. "You lied about everything." "Michael, please." "No." His voice cracked. "You made me doubt my own mother. You made me believe she was crazy." He turned to Ellie, eyes wet. "Mom, I'm so sorry." Ellie placed a hand on his cheek. "I know, son. Now stand with me." Tom laid the final document in front of Vanessa, a formal agreement, typed and notarized. "Sign, or we call the police." Vanessa hesitated, breathing hard. Then she grabbed the pen, scrawled her name, and shoved it back. "Are you happy now?" Ellie exhaled. "No, but I am free." Vanessa glared, trembling. "You'll regret this, old woman." Ellie met her gaze with steel. "No, dear. You will." Minutes later, the front door slammed behind her. 2 suitcases, a fading perfume trail, and silence. Michael sank onto the couch, covering his face. "What have I done?" Ellie sat beside him, touching his shoulder gently. "You did the right thing." At last. Outside, wind brushed through the maple tree, scattering a few golden leaves across the porch. The house exhaled, lighter, alive again. The house on Maple Street felt foreignly quiet after Vanessa's departure. No perfume. No footsteps that didn't belong. Just the soft ticking of the clock and the hum of life returning. For the first time in years, Eleanor Hart woke without dread. She brewed her coffee slowly, savoring its warmth, and stood by the window, watching the morning light spill across the garden Daniel had planted. Peace, she realized, had a sound. It was silence without fear. But peace didn't erase the damage. Bills needed to be sorted, locks needed to be changed, and restitution had to be enforced. Tom Blake came by that afternoon, his leather briefcase snapping open on the dining table like the start of a new chapter. "She signed the agreement," Tom said, "but we'll make sure she honors it. If she doesn't pay, I'll file charges immediately." Ellie nodded. "She'll pay," she said quietly, "because she knows I'm not afraid anymore." The first weeks passed like healing after surgery, painful but cleansing. Michael helped replace the locks and repaint the rooms Vanessa had modernized. The walls felt lighter, the air breathable again. He rarely spoke of his wife, except once, standing in the backyard under the string lights Daniel had hung decades ago. "Mom," he said, voice trembling, "I don't deserve forgiveness." Ellie looked at him, her son who had been both her wound and her proof of love. "Then earn it," she said. "Not with words, with actions." And he did. He filed for divorce, cut ties cleanly, started working overtime to rebuild the savings Vanessa had bled dry. His siblings called often, offering comfort and laughter. Little by little, the house began to sound like family again. Then, one cold February afternoon, Tom called. "You might want to sit down, Ellie." "What now?" she asked, bracing. Vanessa's attorney reached out. "She's proposing a settlement, full repayment, right now." Ellie's stomach turned. "With what money?" "She inherited an apartment from her grandmother. She wants to transfer the deed to you in exchange for closing the debt." Ellie was silent. "She wants me to own her home?" "Not her home," Tom corrected. "Her consequence." The next day, Ellie walked into a downtown conference room where Vanessa waited with her attorney. 6 months had changed her. The gleam was gone. Her face pale, her clothes plain, her eyes sunken but clearer. "Mrs. Hart," Vanessa said softly, "thank you for coming." Ellie sat down opposite her. "Let's keep this simple." Vanessa slid a folder forward. This is the deed. The apartment's worth around $90,000. It clears my debt and legal fees. Tom examined the documents. Everything checked out. Ellie looked at her former daughter-in-law for a long moment. Why the sudden generosity? Tears welled in Vanessa's eyes. Because I can't live with this anymore. I lost my husband, my reputation, everything. You gave me a chance to pay instead of putting me in jail. I don't deserve your mercy, but I want to do what's right. Ellie's voice softened, though her spine stayed straight. Doing what's right now doesn't erase what you did. I know, Vanessa whispered, but maybe it can start something better. Ellie's next words carried quiet steel. If you want redemption, you'll sign one more paper, a written confession. Your words, not a lawyer's. Vanessa hesitated, then took the pen. Her hand trembled as she wrote, I, Vanessa Cruzhart, acknowledge committing fraud and abuse against Eleanor Hart. I stole money, pawned her jewelry, and isolated her through manipulation. I accept full responsibility. She signed and slid it across the table. Ellie read it once, then nodded. Now we're done. Vanessa looked up, tears clinging to her lashes. Do you forgive me? Ellie stood, gathering the papers. Maybe one day. But forgiveness isn't a gift. It's earned. Outside, the winter sun flared off the glass buildings, and Ellie felt light again. Weeks later, the apartment was legally hers. She handed the keys to Michael. You'll fix it yourself, she told him. Every wall you paint, every nail you hammer, will remind you that rebuilding starts with honesty. He hugged her, voice breaking. Thank you, Mom. 3 months passed. The apartment became a home, warm, bright, alive with new beginnings. And the jewelry Vanessa returned gleamed once more inside Ellie's safe. Yet, as she looked at them, she realized something profound. Those jewels no longer defined her worth. One quiet evening, she stood in her living room, the walls glowing gold with sunset. The safe clicked shut, full again, and her reflection shimmered in its polished surface. She smiled softly. The rarest jewel I own, she whispered, is the one no one can steal. Outside, the maple tree rustled in approval, scattering its leaves like applause. And for the first time in a long time, Eleanor Hart truly felt it. Freedom, signed and sealed.